Welcome to this April 18th meeting in the Nevada City Planning Commission. I'll read the city's mission statement. The City of Nevada City is dedicated to preserving and enhancing its small town character and historical architecture while providing quality public services for our current and future residents, businesses, and visitors. We are called to order. And this planning commission meeting convenes on the ancestral territories of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe. Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like to lead us, Rod?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And how about a roll call?
Commissioner Ermshaw?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Van Zant?
Here.
Vice Chair Cobden?
Here.
And Chair Knight.
Here. And Lisa has an announcement for us.
Yes, I wanted to make an announcement and honor a former planning commissioner who passed away on Monday. David Bohegan was a commissioner who took his role on the Planning Commission seriously. He was also a current member of our Sales Tax Oversight Strategic Initiative Committee. So I'm very sad to inform you of his passing. He died of a stroke playing pickleball. So there will be a memorial for David at the May 8th City Council meeting to further honor his work with the city. And in his honor, I just wanted to have a moment of silence.
Thank you, Lisa. Regarding public comment, let's see. Where shall we start this? It's very long. The Planning Commission cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. And please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item at the time it's heard. Speakers must restrict comments to the item as it appears on the agenda and stay within a 3-minute time limit. The chair similarly has the discretion of limiting the total discussion time for any item as may be necessary. So, is there any public comment for any item not on today's agenda? Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Crowley. I live on Nevada Street. And when I was looking at one of the projects that's come up, it got me thinking about the sort of confusing nature of the ADU ministerial setbacks versus like the normal setbacks for like rear setbacks for development. And it's just sort of confusing because if you want to build a garage, it has to be 25 feet off the back. But then if you want to build a garage with an ADU on it, it can be 4 feet from the back. And I thought, well, why not just make it simple and make all accessory buildings allow a 4-foot setback? That type of thing. So just kind of a cleanup and, so the ordinance works better, easier to figure out. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
But this is government.
Probably could make more sense. All right. Next up is the consent calendar. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature, and all recommended actions of the staff report will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the commission or public requests otherwise, in which case the item will be removed for separate consideration. And any item so removed will be taken up following the motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Ermshar.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cobden.
Yes.
Chair Nye.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And next up, 506 Nevada Street, demolition and architectural review application with a variance request for a detached garage. Would you like to? Yeah, come on up. That's you, right?
That's me.
And if you'd like to introduce the item for us, Lisa?
Sure. So project applicant Dave Mann, on behalf of property owner Mark Vronsky, have a request for a demolition and architectural review permit with a variance to maintain the existing encroachment into the rear yard setback for a garage structure. There's an existing garage structure that has fallen into disrepair and appears to be infeasible to rehabilitate. The applicant requests demolition of the structure and architectural review for the new structure to be built in its place. The proposed structure is a single-story garage with a 7 and 12 pitch primary roof and a 3.5 by 12 secondary roof over the entry, which is like a shed-style second roof. The existing garage structure sits basically on the side yard property line and approximately 12 feet from the rear property line. The applicant is requesting a variance to standards to allow for the continued encroachment into the rear yard setback, but the proposed building will abide by the 5-foot side yard setback. So only the rear yard setback is encroachment is requested with the variance.
Excuse me, I'm having a hard time hearing. I just wondered if everyone. I am good. Yeah, we didn't hear the comment that Lisa made before at all.
It's real.
Okay,
I think your microphone's pretty far away.
They're on now.
thank you.
Check, check.
Check. Yes?
Is that better? I hear an echo now, so.
I still think the microphone's too far from your face, Lisa.
Thanks, Wendy. Is that better?
Yeah, much.
Okay.
Soft voice. You gotta yell in that.
That too.
So again, the request is for a demolition and architectural review permit with a variance request to maintain the existing encroachment into the rear yard setback for a garage structure. There's an existing garage structure that has fallen into disrepair and appears to be infeasible to rehabilitate. The applicant's request is for a demolition of the structure and architectural review for a new structure to be built in its place. The proposed structure is a single-story garage with a 7 and 12 pitch primary roof and a 3.5 and 12 secondary roof pitch over the entry, which is the man door on the side of the building. The existing garage structure sits on the side yard property line and basically right up to the property line, and then 12 feet from the rear property line. The applicant is requesting a variance to standards to allow for continued encroachment into the rear yard setback to place the new building, the proposed building, in the rear yard setback, but the building would abide by the 5-yard side yard setback. In the staff report, you'll see the renderings of the proposed structure, and there's also some photos of the existing building. The age of the building is unknown. It seems that it was added onto over the years. There's a gable portion of the roof and then sort of like an extension, which creates an outdoor storage area that's not fully enclosed. Typically for demolition, the Planning Commission can request plans for a replacement building. I did not make a finding of whether the existing building is mother lode style architecture. I we'll leave that up to the commission. If it were, the proposed replacement could be required to maintain mother lode architecture style. So I will let architect Dave Mann add anything that I may have missed regarding the application, and go over the design with you and get questions answered.
Well, thanks very much. Can you hear me? I don't know how many of you got a chance to look at the existing building, but it's not much. And it also sits back about 85 or 90 feet from the street. It's tucked in to a grouping of tall trees. Obviously, there was a need to upgrade the building. It's falling over. It's completely rotten. And I don't know if you noticed in some of the pictures, there's a giant double fork cedar tree that is pushing against the building. It's partially inside the building. And so correcting that side yard setback was a goal. And we played with the idea of pulling the building forward. However, and one of the design guidelines is to try to maintain a private side yard or rear yard outdoor area. And by pulling it too far forward, it was really impacting an existing patio area. So we decided to hold that rear setback, and I did a sort of a survey of the neighborhood. All the adjacent properties, or the two adjacent properties, both have garages that are entirely in the setback, and not even close to meeting setback requirements. So we felt like as long as we're moving the building farther away on one side and getting compliant there, that we could hold that back line. I think that's really it. The building is very straightforward, but certainly entertain any questions that anybody has about it.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions from the commission for Lisa or Dave?
No.
The forked cedar tree, is that coming out?
It's, I don't think that's been discussed. It's on the neighbor's property.
Okay, okay. Just curious. I'd say that the building is a mother lode building, the one that you'd like to demolish.
Oh, I would say so too,
yeah.
yes.
In all its character.
Yeah.
Okay, no questions? Any discussion from the commission?
Hearing from the public, maybe?
Comment?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'd like to
I
hear.
just thought I'd make it obvious.
Sure, yeah. You're wearing red and everything. You're very visible. Yeah, yes.
Lori Oberholzer, 310 Nevada Street, and I'm representing the Nevada Street Willow Valley Neighborhood Association. We weren't too excited about the previous proposal, but we really like the garage that's being proposed right now. It's consistent with almost all of the garages in the neighborhood are one-story. Many of them are right, on the property line. I'm about a block away. My house has a 15-foot tall garage. Both of my neighbors, even the big house, has a 15-foot tall garage. Both of my neighbors across the street have 15-foot tall garages. So it seems to be the theme for garages in the neighborhood. And it's a cute, kind of reminds me of Jordan Fisher Smith's garage that he rebuilt on Nursery Street. Cute little board and batten thing. So anyway, we really like it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lori. Any other public comment? Hi, Brad.
Brad, I just wanted to say that I support the demo and the variance and the project as presented. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, commissioners.
No questions over here?
No. I think it looks
Is there a
good.
motion? No,
There's no other discussion.
it's a very nice new building, and the side setback is a nice gift back to, the neighborhood. Rear setback, there's plenty of precedent for encroachment there.
I have a motion.
And your work, I'll just continue my comment, Amy, thank you.
You asked if there was a motion.
Then I made a comment. And your design utterly embodies mother lode architecture. Motion, Amy?
Motion to approve as written in the staff report.
I'll second.
Commissioner Ermshire?
Okay, so we're just proving all the findings?
Oh, thank you, Wendy.
Because there's a variance
Yeah.
request
Oh, thank
and
you.
there's, yeah. Demolition.
Would you like to lead us through the process for making motions, Lisa?
Yes.
Are we not able to,
You could say, I motion to approve making findings A, B, and C in the staff report.
sure.
Just wanted to be clear.
Okay, that's good. I'll second it, or I think you seconded it, yeah.
It's a new motion, so.
It's a new
you can
motion.
have the second.
All right. I
Roll
second
call.
it.
Commissioner Ermschar,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cobden.
Yes.
Chair Nye.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Thank you.
I think that's a new record, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much commentary. Next up, item 6, 516 Sacramento Street, architectural review, demolition permit, and variance application for residential remodel.
Jason, would you like to come up too? Or are you going to sit in the audience?
If you need me, I will.
I think it would be helpful.
Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Baker. I'm here to help represent the project for the Woodwards at 516 Sacramento Street. And do you want me to kind
Do you want
of?
me to introduce
Yeah,
you?
Lisa's going to
Okay, great.
introduce the,
Thank you.
Thank you. So this project before you is for remodel request for a demolition architectural review permit and variance request for encroachment into the side and front yard setbacks. Application is by Jason and Renee Woodward, represented today by Richard Baker, and their designer is Kristen Woodward. Sorry, not Woodward, Kristen, I'm blanking at the moment, Kristen. The project was before you at your December 2023 meeting, and the commission requested a redesign and review by Advisory Review Committee. On January 26th, Commissioner Cobden and Chair Nye met with the applicants and their designer to discuss a redesign as an ARC meeting. Site constraints and the insufficiency of the current interior ceiling height were discussed at that ARC meeting, along with the potential solutions to increase the usability of the home. The existing residence is approximately 1,400 square feet, and the proposed remodel would add 1,211 square feet, bringing total square footage to 2,610. The height of that building is proposed to be 28 feet, 10 inches. There's also a proposed ADU with a garage underneath that is before you today for review. The ADU is approximately 729 square feet and is proposed to be constructed above a 408 square foot garage. Height of that building is 23 feet 9 inches. The variance request is regarding an existing non-conforming encroachment into the side yard setback and also the front yard setback. The home sits approximately 26 feet from the front property line and approximately between 3 to 5 feet from the side property line, except for an existing, what's called a shed, that will be removed and not included in the project that goes all the way up to the property line on that side yard. The remodel project would further encroach into the front yard setback with an expansion of the front porch, the covered front porch, and then also it would further encroach into the side yard setback. But all improvements would be at least 3 feet from the property line on that side. A letter from the adjacent neighbor is included in your staff report for that side yard setback, and they did show support of the renovation project and no objection to the variance. Architectural review, the improvements in their current design include Cove shiplap wood siding by the molding company, wood shingles at the gable ends to match the existing shingles with the hopes of reusing some of the existing shingles on the gable end walls. Milgard single hung aluminum windows with grids in the bronze anodized color and an asphalt shingle roof. The colors are presented in the design board that was provided by the designer. Corner board and window trim will be a Puritan gray color. The body of the building is proposed to be I'm not 100% clear on the colors.
The
so I'm sure
magnolia
that
color.
You can look
Puritan
at the
gray.
design board there. If you'd like, I can state what they are. I will state that the fascia, which is the board that goes along the gable end, is proposed to be white, and it's an embellished style with a sort of unique cutout pattern on it. Covered front porch with a Swiss chalet flat-sawn porch baluster. The lighting styles for the exterior are also included in the staff report, and they will be consistent for the home and the ADU. In reference to the design guidelines, there's an example of a home on Sacramento Street in the design guidelines that increase the usability of the upstairs space by adding a knee wall, which is similar to what the Woodwards are proposing. So that example is in your staff report for your review. There's also excerpts from the design guidelines that state how a proposed remodel project should meet the objectives of the design guidelines. And I found that the proposed project does meet the design guidelines in several ways, including roof pitch, siding materials matching historic materials in appearance and no synthetic or composite materials proposed, covered porches and entries. The design includes a 4 and 12 pitch covered front entry and covered rear entry. Historic basis for trim railings and details. Roofing material in a non-glare color. Exterior colors, not bright or modern. Windows, metal-clad windows are identified as appropriate in the guidelines. So in evaluating the proposed project, the Planning Commission needs to make a finding of consistency between the architectural style of the existing home, which is mother-lode architecture, and what is before you today. So making the finding that the proposed project is consistent with mother-lode architecture. And for the ADU, the ADU is before you today as at a staff level, garages cannot be reviewed ministerially. ADUs can. In essence, the ADU over a garage could be, 2 applications, but the cleanest way for the commission the cleanest way and path towards approval for the ADU and garage is to have a planning commission finding that the building is consistent with mother-lode architecture, consistent with the buildings on the site, which is the primary residence, and generally compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. With that, I'll hand it over to Richard to add on to anything I might have missed.
I don't think you missed much, honestly. I think that what I'd like to just point out is that the Woodwards and their designer went to great lengths to change the initial design to meet the response to respond to comments from the commission, and I worked with them for part of that time to help them to make decisions about some of the materiality of the building to get it within the sort of standards of the city. And so we feel, comfortable with the design. I asked them to put the two elevations on the sheet that are the ones that would be seen from public view, because I think that that's important for you to recognize, is that the other two elevations are either the rear elevation not seen by the public, or the elevation that is seen most by their neighbor, who was the individual who wrote the letter in support of the project. So wanted you to be aware of that too. And then if you have any specific questions about some of the decisions that were made as far as shapes, material, the reasoning for the additional square footage, I'd be happy to respond to those.
Thanks, Richard. Any questions from the commission?
I wasn't clear on the, you weren't clear on the colors. Could you clarify the colors on the body of the house?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw the design board that we put forth. The body of the house is expected to be this reclaimed wood magnolia color.
Okay.
And then the trim at the top, the gable trim, would be this, also that, it's called, it's also it's vintage crown magnolia. The corner boards would be this Puritan gray, and then the fascia that she mentioned before would be the white.
I do have some color chips that we can pass around here in a minute. Donna went to grab them for me.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Is it possible to have a rendering so we understand what parts of the buildings we're talking about, or?
It's not a requirement, but I mean, I suppose it could be, if that was something that was requested by the commission.
Yep.
The issue, just for my clarification, Lisa, about the ADU garage coming to us is the size of the garage component. Is that right?
Yeah, upon further review, the size of the garage, there's a section in the code that relates to an ADU with an attached garage. And that is actually referencing like a ministerially approved ADU. So if somebody had an ADU application that was eligible to be reviewed at staff level, they would be allowed to have an attached garage that was up to 250 square feet. Similarly to what you guys have reviewed in the past with like change in window styles or slight variations, if a building, an ADU, wanted to have a larger garage, they could potentially come to the commission to have, standard architectural review of their ADU. So this is sort of similar to that in that way.
It pertains to the size of the garage versus an architectural detail that might not be consistent with the objective design standards.
Correct. And I also feel like the allowance for an attached garage may be different than an ADU above a garage. And I don't think that an attached garage in that way was necessarily the intent of that section of the code being added. The part of the code that references an ADU above a garage says that they are allowed as long as they don't exceed the height of the primary residence or 35 feet. So it could be an existing garage that somebody wants to build an ADU above, and we could, if that was the case, we could review that at staff level.
So I sort of view this as like a garage that's serving the main house. If it were considered just as forgetting the ADU for a moment, if it were just a garage with this square footage to serve the main house as an auxiliary building, how would that fit within the code and all that? Would it meet the current code and all of that? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no I'd have to double check, but I don't think there's any issue with like the square footage
Okay.
or anything like that.
Okay, and so we thought of it as that, and then the ADU on top of a quote-unquote existing garage, then that would likely meet the square footage would fall within the requirements and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
I think as well as the structure looking vastly like the primary residence. That's another element of it, I believe.
What do you, sorry, I'm not.
The architecture, that the look of the building is vastly like the primary residence. Like you couldn't
Oh,
do
we're
like
taking-
an ADU that was sort of like a glass box next to
Uh-huh.
a mother lode style, home in our
Oh, I
town.
see.
Because the ordinance specifically states that the ADU is
I didn't catch
required to look vastly like the primary residence.
We each get a set, yeah.
Oh, I see, it's stapled together.
I'm
That's handy.
cold.
So the top color, reclaimed wood, is the body of the house. So if you look at the rendering there, that would be this part, the shiplap siding. And then the gable ends, which are the brown, would be the shingles, the wood shingles here. The trim is around the windows and on the corner boards, and then also the porch balusters and porch elements, and then the fascia is the gable end board. Are you tracking me, Wendy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the porch top railing and the fabric of the Swiss chalet cutouts are the same color? No contrasting stuff there, same color?
That's correct. Yeah, that's the proposal.
And do the windows have divided lights now on the house?
There's a series of photos of the house in your packet.
I'm having a tough time scrolling through them.
Sorry, I'm happy
I
to
can put it
pass it
up for you.
forward if you'd like. Here, there's if you want to show that to Chairman.
Here, Tom.
Thanks.
It's like a mix.
No, those are not divided.
It's pretty much 1/1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1/1 everywhere.
There,
Occasionally a 2/1.
this one looks divided to me, like in the middle. These are two separate windows. Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the commission?
The siding currently is vinyl. Did anyone pull the vinyl off to see this style of siding beneath there?
You can actually see in that picture right there on the porch, there's two pieces of the vinyl siding that have fallen off there.
Oh, okay. I happen to be on that screen. Okay, and so is that the Dutch Cove, or is that more of the rustic channel style of wood siding?
It looks very much like what we're proposing, it's that cove. It's the same side, it's the same siding that, I'm sorry, there's like a million lineal feet of this in this town, but it's like what we did when I did the project on Broad Street, 416 Broad, it's that same siding. It has sort
You
of like
used the same exact siding?
That's why I proposed this, is because it's a siding that, I mean, it's on a vast number of homes in this town.
If not perfectly
And it's-
historic, it reads as historic because there is so much of that profile.
Yeah, it's just that profile is like ubiquitous in this town, and it's still available, and it's available in a good quality material that's wood.
With the same dimensions and reveal and so forth. And then I'm curious also about the trim. There's not a lot of description for, say, the window trim other than the dimensions of the wood, but, you know, given the vinyl siding, there's not a lot of trim anymore because they
Yeah.
cover it up, so that can definitely have bearing on the overall feel and aesthetic of the building. So is there any plan or idea about how that would be
I think, I mean, what I
constructed?
typically recommend, and I believe that the Woodwards are on the same page as this, is that you would do essentially a picture frame trim on two sides and the top, and then you would have a functional sill with an apron underneath it. So that's a very, again, typical detail of, that may not be, I mean, these plans are obviously design development plans, they're not construction documents, and so that level of detail isn't typically in a set of plans like this unless it's requested by the Architectural Review Commission. But I think I mean, similar to my discussions on previous projects with Chairman Nye, that's a very common detail for a window trim in this town, is like a 4-inch trim around the top and the sides, a very prominent sill detail that has ears that go modestly past that trim detail, and then a apron beneath that.
Thank you.
It seems like I was missing details as to how the front porch skirting, the underpinning treatment.
It's a board and batten detail that's really also common for that type of raised porch in this community as well.
Right, the detail that's missing for me is what the fascia detail would be around that, and
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think that the thing that is complicated about these meetings is how granular these plans need to be in order to gain approval at this level. I mean, if it's expected for every single detail to be complete and for this, it's just a lot of expectation for the, client to go through in order to get this approval from my perspective.
for final architectural review, though, it seems to me important to know what the widths of things are, trim details, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's extraordinarily granular, but I suppose, so are you asking about the?
Maybe details like that to be worked out with a liaison to the planning commission?
That was what I was just about to recommend, is that often on projects like this where there is a concern for that level of detail, a liaison is an excellent tool for being able to accomplish that, level of detail and follow through from the client throughout the course of the project.
The reasoning being, it's such an old house, it's very historic, I mean, aside from the, final siding, and it will be changed, it's proposed to be changed in terms of its mass and feel, so the details are important, maybe more so than on another project. And this one is surrounded by so many houses of its type, so the vernacular really needs to be followed, I think.
I agree with everything you just said, except for the fact that it's very historic, but yeah. I mean, it's old, certainly, but
I feel like the facade looks
imagine that
pretty
it's historic
historic.
in any way. What's that?
Oh, it's,
You may take my meaning as historically significant,
Okay,
but it's
yeah.
old, yes,
Right.
so
I get that it's
historic.
old. I get
Yeah.
the age of it is consistent with structures that this commission is concerned about protecting. And I think that is recognized in the design, frankly. I mean, if you look at it, like I said, the first two elevations, I think, are prominently what a house in Nevada City might look like, from my point of view.
And the devil's in the details from my point of view.
I totally agree with that, yeah. And I know that about you.
And it
Yes.
works out well.
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to add to this discussion, our architectural review, B, says, "City's goal in architectural review is to implement the goals of the city's general plan by preserving the character of Nevada City architecture in terms of historic value, site coverage, planning, volume and massing, materials in general design and detail." So there's, even though it's not in the historic district, there's no throwaways. It still has to meet these criteria.
Right.
And there's another one that calls out pre-World War II buildings, which of course this is. And again, standards shall be addition to other guidelines and regulations set forth. blah, blah,
Sure.
blah. So every detail is up for review in terms of the historicity.
I'm not disagreeing with that
And
at
I'm not,
all. I
and I'm
just
not
think
picking
that-
on one either.
Yeah, no.
That's an overview.
Right, no, I appreciate that. I think that that we got to the end of that conversation was the idea of the addition of a liaison is, in my mind, the best way to solve that, not by doing, thousands of dollars worth of detailed drawings in order to gain approval at this position.
I have a
in the
clarifying
project, but, yeah.
question. Richard, can you remind me of your role in this?
So basically, I know the Woodwards and I care about them being able to move back into this community and develop a home for themselves and their family that works and it's the quality of home and the age of the home is important to them. I saw that they were struggling with the process and I asked them if I could help in some way. I'm also friends with the individual that they intend to use for the construction of the home. And so when I looked at the work that the designer had done previously, I recognized immediately why they would have problems in gaining approval at this level. And so I did my best to act as a consultant, having had 25 years of experience getting projects approved in this city, and hopefully help them to get the project to a point where it looked more like a project that could be approved at this level than it did previously.
Thanks so much. I'm asking because I feel like your reputation speaks for itself. None of us have to tell you about the devil's being in the details, although I appreciate where it's coming from. I just want to make sure that the message is going to the appropriate receiver. And in the interest of how complicated this project can be, would love to try and focus on the constructive moving forward. We've spent so much time discussing it already, and
Could I ask a question?
of course.
Yes, we're in the question part, right, not the discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question in the theme of scale and also generally the impact to the lot and the neighborhood as a whole. I see on, I guess it's page 32 of our packet, a footprint of, hash mark of the existing home and then the addition, and then also a footprint of the proposed project. I'm curious, they look really close together. Do we know the distance between the two?
Yeah, so if you, are you on this drawing?
Yes.
Maybe, this guy?
Yeah, so the
Do we
hash
have projection?
marked.
Do we have projection for the screens?
The TV over here is off,
I
though.
see what you're looking at, and I could describe it if you'd like. That's easy enough.
So I understand this diagram. What I'm interested in is this space.
Yeah.
Because I'm imagining myself from the street, looking at both buildings that are now much, much bigger. And so looking at them individually.
I'd like to debate the much, much bigger part, because the home itself is only raising 3 feet. It's only going up this high, much higher than it was before.
Okay.
So it's not much, much bigger in that sense. And the square footage is designated as what seems like quite a bit more, because when you determine square footage, you determine it by any space in the home that's livable that has a 7-foot or higher headroom. And right now, because the building sits down so that the rafters sit essentially on top of the ceiling joists, there's a vast majority of the upstairs volume is unusable. I mean, you've probably been in attics before, obviously, right? So anything that's in that attic currently that's less than 7 feet can't be considered square footage, right? So by raising it 3 feet, it gives them obviously quite a bit more square footage that's usable for them upstairs in order to have bedrooms and bathrooms and things like that. But it's not expanding the height of the house by more than 3 feet. Did that make clear?
Yeah, I got a lot of information that I wasn't
Yeah,
asking for.
yeah.
I'm clear on that. So when I'm standing at the street
Yeah.
and the roof is raised 3 feet
Right.
across the width, when you think about the front square footage of
That's this
increased
elevation
home
there.
volume,
Right.
right? And then I look further up the side of the home where the L pops out, and now there's a roof facing me that wasn't
Right.
there before, to create the L, all for the reasons that you explained. And then I look further up and I see the garage that is now 2 stories. I'm just trying to understand what that picture looks like from the street view, because I do think that the impact is bigger than looking at one building on its own. And the absence of space is part of that impact. Does that make sense? So the space between the corner of the garage and the home, I'm just curious what that measurement is.
I don't have a ability to scale that currently, but I think there is some description of that distance on here that, my eyes are not good enough to read this at the scale that it's at. So one second, let me see if I can figure out.
Is this property, is this rendering of?
To scale?
Yeah, of the bird's eye view to scale? It looks like it is.
So it looks narrower than the proposed new porch
My understanding is
extension.
that by code, it can be as little as 10 feet, right? So without it there being a reason for there to be, like a fire separation. But my understanding, based on his comment, is that it's proposed to be 12 feet.
So then this wouldn't be to scale, because I don't think the proposed,
It looks like
I think
7.
it must be to scale, though.
Yeah, it has
well,
to be.
it couldn't be 12 feet then, because I don't think this porch is 12 feet wide, is it? Is the new part of the porch, covered porch, 12 feet wide?
So I wish I could help you understand that, the answer to that.
So the issue there is that it needs to be to code, and we're concerned that it's not to code.
The issue is part of how we evaluate this demolition variance and remodel is also based on the scale. And so the proximity of the buildings can be really, if they're very close together, it can be conceived as one giant kind of set of building.
If I may clarify, the issue is aesthetics rather than to scale. We can probably presume not to scale, to code. We can presume it's to code.
But it'll have to be to code.
Exactly.
There's no getting around that.
So,
part.
yeah, the legal clearance is not the concern as much as the aesthetic impact of both buildings next to each other.
Right.
And if I could take a few steps back, Lisa, if it was just a garage and not an ADU, it would be a staff review? No?
If it was a garage, it would come to you guys for architectural review.
Okay.
If it was just an ADU that was single story, it would go to her.
A single-story ADU, thank you.
Or if it was an existing garage with an ADU above.
Got it, okay.
Right.
Any other questions?
I do have a question for the chair and Commissioner Cobden about the review that you held. Are the details you see here consistent with your discussions, or is there anything relevant that we should know from that?
As far as I am concerned, I think that they did a wonderful job of listening to our concerns.
And I'll say there was a lot of input, because we are working from the previous design, which, at this point, they were just taking information, and it seems to me that they heard us very clearly and responded. They responded
Okay,
Tom?
thank you.
fully, yes.
Public comment?
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
We're about to.
Well,
I have another-
I want to make sure we have public comment to factor
That
into our
was a-
discussion.
Right, that was
I'm
a
not-
question for Rod's information.
I'm not arguing about
Ready?
that.
Hold on, I might be able to answer my own question.
May I
I'm
have
good.
those, I'm sorry,
you.
the elevations back, or the photos back that I passed to you earlier? That just might help.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Any other questions, Rod or Peter?
Not for me.
I'd just like to say, for the benefit of the public and my fellow commissioners, that we talk about details, but we can certainly trust the reputation and intent of people who come before us, and verifying is also a part of our job to advocate for the city. So is there any other questions? Any public comment at this time? Please come
I don't
up
have
to the podium.
questions, I will have comments later
Yeah.
on, okay. Just so we're clear.
My husband and I are the neighbor adjacent that submitted the letter, and we are perfectly in support We are so tired of that ugly house that after seeing the renderings, we're in total support of this project.
Thanks.
Dwayne Strasser. I am a neighbor across the street from this property. We have seen this property fall apart over the years. We knew the previous owner extremely well. And anything that's being done in this rendering, I think, is a positive to our neighborhood. It's kind of disappointing to me, and nobody asked me, Mr. Woodward, nobody here, my other neighbors asked me to come here. This was not pre-planned. But I'm disappointed to see that they've gone through what appears to be several steps and probably thousands of dollars of additional planning and alterations, when I think what they presented the first time was very reasonable. This house is it's miner's cabin. It's got vinyl siding, for heaven's sakes. Anything they do is going to make it fit more appropriately into our neighborhood. It's going to be a benefit to the house and to the neighborhood. Back in 2001, the last time we went through this, where we had a small handful of folks against Mr. Stacer's house, and he was blocked from doing what was a reasonable, very reasonable remodel, in my opinion, at the time. It turned into him demoing that house. That's what we ended up with, because we put so many burdens unreasonably, in my opinion, onto that owner. Don't do that again, please. The only setback challenge I see here is with our western neighbor on his property line. My understanding is they've agreed it's fine. They've acknowledged it. My house is only 3 feet at the back corner from my neighbor. That's the way it was built in the 1920s. We put on a new deck on our house on Valley Street several years ago, and the original stairway, there was no sidewalk. We had open dirt channel gutters going down Valley Street. There was no sidewalk for people to walk on. The original stairway came down 3 feet from the dirt gutter channel. We put on a new deck. The new stairway we put on was 12 feet back, and we got nailed because it was still too close for the setback, even though we moved it many feet further away from the street than what it had been originally. That's not what the Planning Commission, in my opinion, is for. You're here to work proactively with our citizens, come up with a win-win solution. This is not a family, from my understanding, that's even moved up here from they have roots here. They're here, and they're here to improve a house they can live in. As my neighbor, the kind of people I want across the street from me, indefinitely. Please be reasonable, and don't let maybe a handful of individuals that don't even live in our neighborhood weigh in and sway the decisions being made on this because of technicalities on some small setbacks. A house that's already relatively small. All of our houses have to use our attics for some kind of storage or living space because we have small homes. Our driveways aren't set back properly because of crooked property lines. That's all. Please be reasonable. I think what they've done, I think they've gone way overboard on trying to be reasonable with what they've asked, well within our codes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tom Stacer, 502 Sacramento Street, Nevada County's favorite son. Let's go back to the summer of 1959 or 1960. It's blazing hot. Rob and Eddie Scott are still living in that house, and the house is falling apart. My dad was working for Southern Pacific, and in his off time, he put in the foundation. I hear the foundation got rave reviews. Those people were still living there. He jacked the house up using tools at that time period. We thought he was going to get crushed, and that foundation is still there. The house looks like garbage. We've watched it fall down since the Scotts lived there, since the Gilpins lived there, and I can go all up and down the neighborhood and tell you who's lived there since the 50s. I would love to see that house remodeled. And so I hope that, just like what Dwayne says, let's work with these guys. They've done good. They've got a good dog, too. So I like that. Anyway, please work with them.
Thanks.
Kathy Wilcox Barnes, also a resident of Nevada City, and even though Mr. Saucer doesn't like it, we all live in Nevada City. I'm not talking about you, Tom, I'm talking about Dwayne. Because we all drive past that a lot, and all of our opinions matter, whatever part of town we live in. What you have before you today is a mistake. It was a mistake by the applicants to buy a house that was not big enough for their needs. It was a mistake for them to feel they could buy this house knowing it did not fit their needs and expect Nevada City to make exceptions to the planning ordinances to let them dramatically increase the size and lot coverage. For all intents and purposes, this is a total demolition dressed as a remodel, resulting in a big new house that they should have looked for elsewhere in the first place. It will be a mistake for you to make those exceptions to our ordinances that will open the door for the others to follow. They bought a house in Nevada City because they love Nevada City, but now expect the city to allow them to remodel it into a new house that changes forever Nevada City's charm. It is not your job as planning commissioners nor the city planners to make exceptions to make the applicant happy, to approve applications just to allow people who have bought the wrong house to make it into what they want. It is your job to follow our ordinances and protect Nevada City. You can say no. That is why we have a planning commission and applications come to you and are not just approved over the counter. There would be no need for you to be sitting here if it was not your job to say no when something does not fit our ordinances. This demolition and expansion will forever change the character of this very well-known and visible neighborhood. This house has worked as it is for over 150 years. It is not a unique roof line in Nevada City. A simple walk or drive around the neighborhoods in town will show you lots of smaller houses similar to this one. This application is George Washington's axe. It's his axe with a new handle and new axe head, removing the siding, changing all the windows, removing the roof and raising it. This is a new house sitting on the lot that once housed a charming Nevada City home. Nothing original, but the site where it's at. As I said at the last meeting, this will remove one more house from the affordable entry-level inventory of our housing stock. The ordinance requires that you as planning commissioners think about that. This doesn't fit. We don't allow demolitions just because the house doesn't work for the owners. This doesn't fit. The ordinance requires you to consider the size, scale, and context of the neighborhood. This doesn't fit. You are to consider the history of the house. This doesn't fit. They must prove a hardship to be granted a variance. This doesn't fit. It might not fit their needs, but it fits Nevada City's needs, and that is what you're here to consider. Not what fits their needs, but what fits for Nevada City. If the house isn't a fit, you should say no, and they
please
should
drive.
find another one.
Thank you.
Lori Oberholzer, 310 Nevada Street, and I'm here representing Nevada City Neighbors. We like most of the new details, really shows, I think, Richard's input. Thank you very much. However, this will be a completely new house. It's essentially a tear down. And I'll go over what Kathy went over. Here's, driving by, when they start working on the house, here's what you're going to see when work starts. The entire roof will be gone. Most of the sidewalls will be gone. All of the siding and the windows will be gone. And there will be not much left there but the wall studs and the floor and the foundation. That's what people are going to see when they drive by. I mean, it's a tear down. So that's why a demolition permit is required, and this is a big deal, and you're doing a variance too. This is not your usual architectural review application. So I'm not going to go over all the details. You guys can do that, but just the two big issues. The first is that the roof will be raised 3 feet. This is a big deal. This kind of attic roof with no knee walls that it has now is the absolute most distinguishing characteristic of this house and many other houses in Nevada City. It's kind of an architectural thing here, and it's precious. But, you can get additional square footage on this house and keep the lower height. All you do is keep the existing height. You can keep the height on the existing height on the new L, what happens is you just have a skinnier, and again, you have skinnier rooms upstairs, like the attic rooms that are up there. I think there's a couple bedrooms up there now. They're just skinnier. And that's what you had in this style of house. The Haley house next door to me is like that. It has a little L, and the upstairs rooms are like that. But the front of it looks very small. So, I mean, there's other ways you could do it. You could do a little addition, a one-story addition on the back that wouldn't have as much square footage. But it can be done. You can get more square footage. You know, it occurred to me earlier today that the point, in the old days when they did L additions, they did them because it was an easier way to build in new square footage. It was cheaper, it was easier. They did it to avoid raising the darn roof. And so that's what would have been done back in the day. They would have maybe done an L, and it just would have been at the existing roof height. On the issue of the size of the house, this really is kind of an affordable housing issue. These smaller houses with the small attic roof situations really are moderate income housing in the old housing stock, and we really need to hang on to our smaller houses. This is a neighborhood of small homes. You've got a chart that we did in the staff report that shows that 67% of the houses on this two sides of the street on Sacramento Street are under 2,000 square feet. And this would be, the new house would be the second largest house on the block after the additions. All of the houses on the other side of the street are one story with the little no knee walls. You have to do a demolition permit. A demolition permit's a big deal. It requires the Planning Commission also to discuss potential loss of affordable housing. I personally don't think the ADU makes up for the loss of this small 1,400 square foot house.
You'll need to wrap up.
Okay. I don't think there's any special circumstances allowing a variance to double the house on this lot. Something more supportable, smaller, that would be typical of the neighborhood would be something that maybe could support a variance. So we just ask you to please keep the historic integrity of the house, don't raise the roof, and please reduce its size. Thanks.
Thanks, Lori. Any other public comments? Okay, hearing none. Commission discussion. Let's start with Peter.
Okay. Primary item is we're raising that 3 feet, and I'm not seeing this remodel as a remodel of the historic building or fitting in with the neighborhood. It's rather large. I objected to the original, but that we didn't get around to that too. So we have the A-frame. We're up 3 feet. We have a full porch roof. We have a side porch, and then we have the big one in the back. So it was characterized as a remodel. It's not. It's a brand-new introduction into the neighborhood of a different style. It's other than the A-frame at the top. So I'm not happy with the whole thing. Probably could live with if that 3 feet comes down and the whole size of it comes down a little bit closer to what's in the neighborhood. I think that would be okay with me. So anyway, that's where I'm at. 3 feet and that's the rest of it. And I think what we were saying earlier too, it's looking down, having the accessory building that close. It's going to look like a compound. I don't have any problem with that, but I don't think it's fair to characterize it as a one-for-one replacement of a historic house. This is not a historic house. It doesn't look historic, and it's certainly not part of it doesn't capture the neighborhood architecture.
Thanks, Peter.
You're welcome.
Rod?
First, I want to thank the applicant for, this is a dramatically improved application from what was before. I felt like the last one was somewhat incoherent in terms of the design, and this is much more coherent. I think it fits together much, much better than the previous one did. In terms of the height increase in knee wall, given that we have an example in our design guidelines of using a knee wall, pretty much something that's identical to this, I feel that this is consistent with that, and I would find it very incongruous for us to disapprove of something that's directly taken as an example from our design guidelines. In terms of the concerns about housing availability and affordability, I do feel that the ADU definitely helps mitigate for that. I think we should take increases where we can get them when they're in accordance with our guidelines and city character, and encourage folks to support that generally within our city. Those are my comments at the moment.
Okay. Amy?
I want to echo what Rod said. I agree. I think that it's on us to revisit our guidelines if we don't want you to raise it with a 3-foot knee wall. We need to go back and look at those documents. We can't hold that kind of double standard. I also want to speak to some of the public comments in terms of, making rooms skinnier. I have a tiny entry-level house with a very skinny and narrow upstairs attic bedroom, and it's hard. I fully get it. I also appreciate the fact that I can't imagine getting this commission to approve me doubling the size of that house, which is, I understand not what you're doing, but it's complicated. I guess that's all to say. I agree that we do have an affordable housing issue, and that this is an example of the kind of house that could be an entry-level house. I'm not sure that that's entirely within our purview to be gatekeeping. I also want to comment that I think Nevada City is a little far gone beyond the affordable entry-level house. I think that that's not the discussion that we should be having today about this particular review. Again, if we want to be thinking about that issue, that's a totally different planning issue. I am comfortable with the design that you put forward. I think it's going to be lovely. I agree with your neighbors. I think you did a really thoughtful job, and thank you for that. The house is already all kinds of variants embodied, I guess. So I'm not worried about the variances. For me, I think I agree, though, as a technicality, I agree it's not as much a remodel as it is a demo, but personally, I'm okay with that.
Thanks, Amy. Wendy, what says ye?
Yeah, well, I think it's a huge improvement in the design, so thank you very much. I do feel like there was a lot of sensitivity brought into trying to really hear what the commission said last time, as well as the Architectural Review Committee, and I think some community partners. So I think there's a lot of improvement there in siding choices and trim choices and so forth. Regarding the variance requests, that's not my big hang-up. I understand what it's like to live in these neighborhoods and that there are existing encroachments. And so there was a public comment that seemed most concerned with an objection to that, and that is not where my objection would reside. My concern is really about the size of the home and what we are bound to in defining, approvals based on scale and context of the neighborhood. And I'm having a hard time seeing that, really reflecting the immediate context. I'm totally in support of you making this more beautiful, and I think that there's some awesome choices that you're making that will deliver just that. I don't necessarily see the size of the house or the desired size of a house quite as a hardship. And I would love to see you just rein it in just a little bit, closer to that 2,000 square feet. Based on my own experience in some of these attic spaces, and furthermore, an additional explanation today, like I get what happens when you have a lower roof. I understand as well that there's an example in our design guidelines that shows that, which personally I think is a mistake, because I don't know which of the ladies said something about how kind of iconic that is, to have the porch and the roof line really kind of almost intersect. It's definitely a kind of a signature style, and yet there is precedence that would be hard, to say that you cannot do that. But the overall scale of the project, I find if it were done as presented, I think overall, what I was trying to get at earlier, Richard, was like raising the building 3 feet, making it 3 feet taller is not just 3 feet, it's 3 feet times the whole width of the building. And then you take the whole width of the L that comes out, and you take the visible surface of the roof line that's now facing the street, and you take the vertical, surface area of a 2-story garage with ADU, and it's really big. It's a lot of building facing that street that is not similar to anything else around it. And so that is my big concern. From a design standpoint, I do have a specific request. You heard my hesitation on the colors. Personally, I don't get it quite. I individually, I think they're all beautiful colors. I don't see it as a cohesive color story. But more importantly, I would say is double hung wood windows versus metal cladding as a material, not so much a problem. The orientation of the panes on the windows that you guys are looking at, I'm not aware of historical reference for that. Typically the orientation is taller than it is wide, and I'm seeing wider than tall in terms of the panes. So there's some of my comments. Did I cover most topics?
Well, thanks, Wendy. I share the concern about overall mass and scale. Overall, there's, from my perspective, plenty of historical precedent for the knee wall effect, a taller wall above the porch roof. There's lots of precedent for that around town and in the style. Also the wraparound porch and the L addition. It's not, I don't think it's out of context with the city. Maybe somewhat with the neighborhood, but not terribly because of the constrained site. You can't expand to both sides. You've only got the one side to expand to. And I think it's all in keeping with the vernacular. I have a concern, though, with the sense of crowdedness with the location of the ADU, as tall as it is. As viewed from the street, the lot will appear packed with house. I'm wondering. That could be mitigated by re-siting the garage ADU further back on the lot so that it doesn't have so much, frontal impact. Because when you're looking at your lot line to the left, viewed from the street, widens as it goes to the rear. And my biggest problem is that just the amount of building that will be presented there.
Can I speak to that just a tiny bit?
Sure, yeah.
Because I think that there's some clarity that I can add. I think that, without being critical of her work, that the designer drafted that footprint poorly on this drawing. This one that shows like the shape of the building being that. Like this really sort of like scalloped shape. I think it's best to look at this drawing that is further back, this one here, that shows it as like a true rectangle, which is what it is on the ground versus that scallop shape. So for one, I just would like to help to create some clarity with that. And then separately, my response to both Commissioner, is it Ermshar?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Perfect.
And Anai, I was going to ask, would you be more comfortable with the idea of the ADU if it were further back on the parcel? Because that was my first response when I started to hear that comment, and I don't disagree with your comment, Commissioner Ermshar. I see where you're coming from with that massing concern, and I'm wondering if by pushing it further back, another, I don't think, it's probably 10, 12 feet further back on the parcel to the point where it's essentially just up against this rear setback and side setback, so it sat back here, so it was quite a bit further away from the main residence, if that was something that would
help you.
alleviate some of your concerns.
I think the issue is a felt thing. It would feel like a edge-to-edge build-out, which is uncharacteristic.
I think that's an excellent catch on her part, honestly, and I agree with that statement, and I'm wondering, and I think that they would be more than happy to consider that, like moving the building back on the parcel in order to accommodate that.
Better would be a one-story
Yeah.
a one-story ADU and garage.
Oriented a different direction, maybe.
Is there
I
room
can't
for
really
that?
speak to that. I mean, again, I don't honestly know the particulars of the
Reasoning.
thousands of dollars that have been spent on design and redesign, but I suppose one thing, and I've done this before with other projects, is that these two things could be, I suppose, if we're at a sticking point and there's not 3 commissioners who are comfortable with the idea of the ADU in its current configuration, that we could request that you remove the ADU from this meeting and move forward with the balance of the requests, and then come back with a redesign of the ADU if they're open to that concept. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily something that's like a requirement of a design in this community, and if it were to sit far back, it'd be very difficult to see it from any place other than like if you were walking down and looking straight down the driveway at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you would even notice it if you were driving by at that point if it were pushed further back.
Yeah, so that's a workable idea to consider the garage ADU separately, because we'd have to see the resiting or reorientation of it.
I don't know if that's something that you would consider a single story I haven't honestly been party to the conversation about the 2-story versus single story.
Appreciate it.
So. But I mean, I think you can see that, like, you would never even see the ADU, like, at this point. The only time if you
Can we
walk
go
down
down
the street just a little bit further, like towards Zion Street, that's the only time you would ever see the ADU, is that split second when you were like driving by or walking by, if it were further back.
Yeah.
So personally, I like the idea of making a recommendation that it get pushed as far back on the parcel as possible to remove it from the massing of the 2 structures so close to one another, but.
That makes it the height right next to each other.
Totally agree.
Mr. Woodward, what was the logic behind where it was placed as presented?
A few different things. One, it creates a kind of a courtyard for us in the back.
Behind.
In the back. Because if you'll notice on the renderings.
This
the
space?
ADU, I'm talking.
So, are you talking here?
No.
You're talking here.
Out the back door of the house. The intent
Here?
is, yes, the intent is to make that back space outdoor living. And if you look at the ADU, the garage, we put carriage doors on that side, so it all becomes like a functional space that is, kind of creative. And then we have further designs to really kind of make that a really cool living space back there. And so that kind of just blends it all in. And if you look at the house directly to the right of the driveway, it's one of those small homes, but those windows look right into our windows. There's also a big air conditioner unit on top of that house. It's just not aesthetically pleasing to look at. So that helps with all of those concerns as well. So those were the thoughts, I guess, in terms of trying to put it where it was right there.
Yeah, maximizing the advantage, your advantages for the design, not necessarily,
I'm sorry.
oh, no, I was just clarifying, not necessarily like an obstacle behind it or anything. It was really just based on your design preferences.
Yeah,
Is that
and we
right?
give more space in the back too, so we had more usable space to kind of make something consistent.
Thank you. Were you going to ask a question, Tom?
No, that kind of covered it. The windows, the Milgard windows, I had more extensive notes and I left my notebook at home, but the Milgard windows are, with the grids, I think that is sort of the wrong choice for the house, the grids, like.
We were trying to figure out what it was that you guys wanted with those windows.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There were so many conversations.
Yeah.
So, that was what we thought was recommended,
Oh,
but I
okay.
think we're not stuck in stone with those.
Right, well,
And in
the
the-
original windows are 1/1, double hungs, and
And skinny.
they are skinny ones grouped together, which is pretty appropriate, I think. The Anderson windows, which was the second choice, have really wide stiles and rails, like they're really massive, so they look like vinyl windows. They look like replacement windows just from a distance because they're so massive. The Milgards are really skinny, so they look like metal replacement windows. This is sort of my area of peevishness generally. So I'll bring it to this discussion.
New technical term.
Yeah. I would suggest Geldwin, the Planning Commission is not endorsing brands, but Geldwin double hung windows, they have wood sash inside and they're clad outside.
Yeah.
And they come in lots of colors. And those double hung windows have a nice historic proportion to the stiles and rails. Would give a more original look. And they're also very nice windows, and I don't think they're super expensive. They're not like the Pellas are very expensive, really restoration-y, but the Geldwins are affordable and have a good period look, in my opinion.
Tom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want the windows voted on separately from the building? Pull that out as a separate? Is that where you're going with this?
It's an item of discussion that I have an issue with, the proposed windows.
Okay.
So what we do with it from here, I'm not certain.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is, we can pull different, we can look at different parts of the proposal, right? And then change, but it's having a discussion and not doing anything about it is an interesting discussion, but it's not planning. So I just want to say, if you want to see something different in the windows, I think you pull it out and our plan, and we agree or don't agree that it's an improvement.
Or,
I'm just
I'm
being
asking the applicants.
Can I make a comment about that? So in the past, at other projects where when I would do projects, typically I would state that the windows were going to be wood windows, metal clad. And that would give the owner eventually the capacity to shop around within that genre of window in order to find a window that matched their budget. Because you could buy, Anderson 100 series windows that very much have the same, size comment that you were making comments about.
Coming from a builder's perspective,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Yeah.
But the Anderson 100 windows are a wood window with metal cladding on the outside, but they're much more affordable than, say, the Sightline version of the Geldwins, or if you go all the way up to, say, like the Lowen window, which would be like 6 times the cost, right? Same concept, wood windows with metal cladding. I think we would be very comfortable with the idea of you saying, we're comfortable with you using wood windows with metal cladding, and we'd like you to work with the liaison to determine what the pattern of the window,
Okay.
grid should be.
Good response.
I would like to add on that and ask for all of the details that we often get caught up in. Would it be worthwhile considering that we can make notes of this for a liaison to be tuned into so that we don't have to make a million different
That's what we're doing.
amendments?
That's what we're
Great,
doing. But
great.
We're
I mean,
discussing
to me-
a range of.
To me, it's
a range to be
probably
considered.
never your role to tell me what brand of window I should
Right.
buy. I mean, I think that the construction of the window is totally appropriate. Back in the day, we used to have to use all wood windows in downtown Nevada City, but Nevada City finally came to their senses about that at some point, and we don't have to do that anymore.
I think
but
you understand where
I
I'm coming from.
100% do.
You were just citing it as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Are we thinking?
No further discussion for me.
Okay. So I would like to continue the garage ADU portion of this to a subsequent meeting with the direction to recite the garage ADU. Is that a motion? I mean, do we do a motion or?
Can I ask if that wouldn't also be something that a liaison could help with?
No, that would be a full commission thing because it drastically alters the design. It's not a small thing.
I mean, I would comment on that and say that you could review it in the further back location. It's, the renderings that you have in front of you don't include like a street view. So it's, we're all imagining what it will be
Yeah.
like. And so imagining it in a place that's 10 feet closer to the street or 10 feet back from the street, I think is up for everyone's mind's eye. So I don't think we can require a rendering to show that exact placement. That's a lot to ask. Does that make
No,
sense?
that's not what I'm asking for.
So I'm saying, like,
I
the
hear you,
commission
Lisa.
could evaluate the ADU in its current location, or if the commission says, you know what, we feel like that needs to be farther back on the property, that could be evaluated today as well, right? It's not going to change the look and feel of the building. It's not changing the architectural review. It's only considering, it's in consideration of the mass and scale, right? And the concerns with that?
Well,
Yes.
It's the property layout is what,
Yeah.
moving it around, yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is it's not going to make a big difference if we push it to another meeting. It's still the same building.
Yeah, and I also think that in personal property rights and the applicant being able to use their property as they wish, that the commission should strongly consider the request of the ADU in its proposed location. They have reasons of why they cited it there. They know the site better than anyone else. It's not encroaching on the setbacks. They have an intended design intent with it in its present location. They have a large family. They want to be able to use their backyard for gardening and, parties and all the things we like to do. So
Interesting.
I think you went a little bit further.
I think so.
Than we usually get. It sounded like you're being an advocate, and we haven't gotten there yet. So I'm going to take I heard what you said.
Yes.
Okay. But You're not
I'm
the
not
app-
acting as an advocate. I'm just encouraging review of the project that's currently proposed, and
Good,
thorough
good, that's it.
evaluation.
Okay, that's absolutely correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would add a comment that, again, for the commission to consider, there are alternatives, and for the applicant to consider as well. I'm familiar with that swamp cooler you're talking about on the house next door. If the ADU weren't there, plantings and other things could be done to help mitigate that view as well, and to improve the view shed, so to speak.
Mass and scale are definitely within our purview, and all buildings on the property contribute to mass and scale. And it's a massive addition to the house. So I'm concerned personally, I don't need to argue my point of view. Do we have a motion to approve as is?
No, I move to continue for elevations. I don't feel like I have the elevations that, I'm looking for different things that address my concern with mass and scale, and I don't see them.
Oh, you're talking about the ADU?
I'm talking about
The whole thing?
the whole thing. I mean, that's fine, there can be a motion.
I'll just say, just to weigh in, it's hard to visualize in a 2D, say, from a street view drawing, it's hard to visualize the impact of both of those buildings adjacent to each other. So we kind of have to imagine it without a model, a full rendering, which is
Is that within our,
A street view rendering of a property would be something I've never seen before. The
I was gonna
designers-
ask.
Yeah, it's a site plan is what's on the application, site plan, and then the renderings of the buildings. So that might be something that we see for conditional use projects, for commercial buildings, but expecting that for a residential project, I think is a little bit of a hardship.
I agree that it's an onerous request. Yeah.
And I totally agree with your point that if the elevation of that building from the street view would look exactly the same if it was touching the street or 30 feet back. It would look exactly the same. Just
I was gonna
that's
say
the
the same
nature
thing.
of the
Yeah.
of
I might not have
elevations.
the right jargon for what I'm seeing in my mind's eye from previous proposals that give a little bit more of a three-dimensional look.
I think the only thing that could do that would be
like a rendered model.
Yeah, it would
Yeah,
be a
we get
3D
those.
rendering,
That's-
which
that's-
That's, I don't feel that that's necessary for this.
Many thousands of dollars worth of effort to put that together.
I think it's
Seems onerous to me.
I agree.
Cool, I can be outnumbered. Okay with that.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the project with the setback of the ADU as discussed to the rear setback line to provide that enhanced separation with the details of the windows. And I think there are some concerns about the porch as well to be handled by a liaison, which I would suggest be you. That would be my motion.
I'd like to modify your motion, if I
Feel free,
may.
yeah.
To include, as we discussed, clad wood windows.
You're okay with that? I mean, that's
Or wood? I mean, is wood fine too? Do they have to be clad?
No, they don't have to be clad, but
Right.
it's we don't require all wood windows in a building that's not of historical significance.
But I think Wendy's
I'm
saying if
just
they wanted to pick that.
If they don't want them clad, they can
Oh,
have
yeah,
those too.
oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Wood or wood clad, yeah.
I accept that modification to my,
Yeah.
I will
motion.
second.
I'm not seeing, sorry, what you were referencing in regards to the porch.
Tom had concerns about the details of the board and batten skirting.
Trim details.
Trim details, yeah. And the point of it is just that a liaison will be involved with the detailed discussion ongoing.
Okay, oh, like window trim.
Yes, window, like house trim,
Yeah.
porch trim, window trim.
So I guess I'm not clear on the motion, because we had a bunch of topics, and so,
So the motion was to approve with the ADU setback to the rear setback line, so moved as far back as possible, essentially, with a liaison, well, with also the addition of the wood or wood-clad windows, and the other details of the windows and the porch to be discussed by a liaison. I think that covered the
Yes.
key details. So Amy seconded it.
I still second.
And
Well,
that's,
wait, the motion includes the primary house. You just mentioned the ADU.
yeah,
It
there's a
includes-
lot going
It
on.
includes the
It
primary.
clearly includes
It includes the
the
primary
main
Includes the
house.
primary
Thank you.
house, yes.
We don't want to
Because
forget that.
the porch is on the main house.
that covers the architectural
Well,
review
that's true.
aspect. So we have a,
Yes, we have a few motions. One is
well-
for CEQA, another is for a variance, and then the architectural review application and the demo.
I think that one was for the third.
I think you're
that was
right.
for architectural review.
Yeah, it wasn't CEQA.
Okay, where is?
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So let's, we
This is
have
the
a
meat of it.
motion for architectural review. So
And the
let us
setback,
proceed
yeah.
with that. It's first and second. So roll call.
Commissioner Ermshar,
No.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant,
No,
Vice Chair Cupton,
Yes.
Chair Nye.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
And could you repeat the CEQA or what that would be?
It's a motion to determine the project exempt from CEQA as described in the staff report.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Ermshar,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant,
yes.
Commissioner Chair, Vice Chair Cobden,
Yes.
and Chair Nye.
Yes.
There was a third one?
And
Make a motion to approve a variance request. I motion to approve B as found in the staff report.
Could you read what B was?
it's a motion to approve a variance request making the following findings in the staff report, 1 and 2.
That
There's special circumstances applicable to the property, including the existence of a foundation for the residence being within the side setback. Planning Commission finds that the strict application of the standard 5-foot side yard setback and the 30-foot front yard setback deprives the property of privileges enjoyed by other residential properties. And 2, conditions have been applied to this project that will assure that the variance does not constitute a special privilege and consistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and zone in which the property is situated.
So moved.
I'll second. Oh, sure.
Commissioner Ermshar,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant,
No,
Vice Chair Cobden,
Yes.
and Chair Nye.
Yes.
And if we could just make one more finding for the demolition permit, to approve the demolition in order to rehabilitate and remodel the home.
And so what would the finding be? Because that wasn't in the staff report exactly.
Yes, you're right. Let me look back here. Your finding can be that it's consistent with mother lode architecture, the proposed project, and that the home is, in disrepair and and that the demolition is warranted. Sorry, I'm a little unprepared with that. I'm looking.
I guess we could reference the one on Nevada Street, had that in the staff
Yeah, I was just looking
report.
at that, and that one's saying that the building is in, such disrepair that it can't be rehabilitated. So this situation's a little different.
I have the demolition permit in front of me if you'd like me to read the
Well,
description of
oh.
the demolition, if that's helpful. It basically says we will be removing the existing vinyl siding. replacing all windows and doors, replacing the roof, updating, replacing plumbing and electrical. We'll be adding insulation. The rear addition from 1950s will be mostly removed and replaced with the new addition area as shown.
So all demolition would be limited to those aspects.
That's what's noted here. yeah.
But given that it's over 25%, that's why the demolition permit's needed.
Removal of all windows kicks it into a demolition, and the removal of a certain percentage of siding, I think it's 35% of siding or something like that.
Yeah,
And it would, in this case, be all of the vinyl siding.
right.
In other words, we're going to take it down to the
Well-
studs.
No, I don't think that's necessarily the case for the entire structure. I think they'll take it to the studs in places where they find that the siding is inconsistent with, it's rotten or whatever. The building will need structural shear, so the vast majority of the siding will be removed in order to provide shear before the new siding is put on. The roof structure is going to be, as you noted previously, is going to need to be rebuilt because it's going to get raised up. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be taken apart and put back together. So there's
Okay.
a fair amount
Yeah.
of demolition
But
that
I mean,
goes.
basically
Yeah,
down to the studs.
ostensibly.
basically.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable expectation, yeah. It's not like it's going to be a dirt parcel and a new home is going to be built
I
there.
think that's the thing
Right.
that needs to
Yeah.
be.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to vote against it, but I think, but I think you're making the right steps.
I'm not surprised.
Lisa, could you read, by the way, I think that your home's going to look great. It's really, though, all this due diligence is on behalf of the city and comparing your plans against the way that I am reading my job. So this isn't it's not a personal thing, it's really a technical thing. But to that end, on the demolition piece, I would love to know what I'm voting on and
Yeah.
whether I'm voting in interpreting, the justification for a demolition permit. Do you want to look that up?
Yeah, I
Thank you.
can read here out of the staff report. So, under the Planning Commission's purview of architectural review, a demolition permit shall be required whenever more than 25% of an existing wall area or building materials, or more than 25% of the existing structure is to be removed. So that back corner is basically being removed and, popped out.
And the whole roof.
Yeah,
The roof is, yes.
they're being replaced, yeah.
It might be reused, the rafters, though. But yes, siding, windows, roof. And then whenever the building or structure that is proposed to be demolished is an example of mother-lode architecture, the Planning Commission, as a condition of granting the demolition, may require the replacement building to reflect the style or character of the building being demolished. So it is under your purview to grant a demolition permit, and then
On what criteria, though?
Yeah.
under the criteria of if it's a change more than 25% to an existing home.
And the findings would be, what are the findings we need to have?
I
Just
think-
we're okay with it, or?
If I may, I think the findings here for me are that the windows need replacing and the back shed area needs replacing, and that's going to be 25% by itself. So I don't.
I don't have that calculation, though. I'm serious. I did, that was part of when I
But
said I
here's-
might be able to
here's
answer my own
The calculation
question.
is that if you consider like one wall of the house out of the 4 walls, say, that is 25%.
Right. So part of my concern is having a clear record. We did not have a clear record a few meetings ago. There's some things missing from the staff report, and I would just like to have them clarified. That's all.
Well,
To my mind, I think that just having that one section of the house plus all the windows is 25%.
I understand your math. What I'm looking for is usually there are findings, and I just want to know what the findings should be that we're voting on. That we're
So
saying,
it's
yes,
under-
this is what we
It's under
found.
the purview of
We found that it's over
architectural review.
25%. Is that all?
It's under the purview of architectural review. And then there's a special section that says if the structure has mother-lode architecture or a structure of special historic significance or architectural significance, any replacement shall, and then there's 6 requirements.
Thank you.
read them, please.
Yeah.
But this is specific to if a structure was torn down without a demolition permit. So let me keep looking for the appropriate section here. Okay, so it's, that's probably not it. There's a section 17.68.060, demolition or removal of buildings. No building of special historical interest or value or of mother lode type of architecture situated within the historical district and fronting upon the bay of streets or alleys within bounding of said district shall be torn down, demolished, or removed unless it becomes so damaged or dilapidated. I don't think that applies in this case because we're not that close to the historic district.
I think it's specific to structures that are built prior to 1942.
46, I think. Is it 42?
I think it's 42, but, and the 25% calculation is a complicated one because it could be just removing the, when they look at it in the code, they look at surfaces, right? So just removing the vinyl siding, if the vinyl siding is on the vast majority of the surface of the exterior of the home, you'd be affecting 25% of the home. And so that speaks to Vice Chair Cobden's comment, which is that just removing the windows alone is affecting likely 25% of the home in some way. So the demolition permit isn't asking for us to be able to bring a tractor in and put that thing in a dumpster and start a new house. It's just saying, are you affecting 25% of this home or not? And we believe we are, and so we applied for a demolition permit.
I do get that. The question is really like, what specifically are we agreeing that we're finding? Right.
So it's an administerial question is what you're asking about, I see. Sorry.
So here from the design guidelines, including architectural review permits are required for construction or renovation of all buildings and structures in existing neighborhoods, including new construction or additions to residences or outbuildings, alteration of exterior appearance, and any removal, demolition, or raising and replacing of any part of such building or structure to make sure such projects conform to the context of the neighborhood and are generally compatible with the style of architecture therein, respecting changes that over time may have acquired significance in their own right. Distinctive stylistic features and examples of mother lode architecture and pre-World War II buildings and structures should be treated with sensitivity. Removal or alteration of historical materials or distinctive features should be avoided wherever possible, and distinguishing original qualities or characters of the building. Original qualities or character of the building, structure or site environment should not be destroyed. Alterations to older homes should match the existing style, materials, and details. Synthetic materials are discouraged. So that's the finding that you make, is that the proposed project, the demolition does not change the architecture and the way that it's presenting mother lode architecture within the context of the neighborhood. So it's in line with the architectural review.
So whereas the garage one was based off of it being too dilapidated to just repair.
It had 3 qualifications. Yeah. So may I take a stab at it?
I'll just say for your benefit, Wendy, the applicants are also bound by the statement of what's being proposed to be demolished, and they'd have to have a conversation with us for said demolition to be more extensive than.
Oh, I'm not
than
worried
the
about
points
that.
shown.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
worried about that. I just, in the application we saw directly preceding this, it was spelled out exactly what findings we were looking for to determine whether we were in favor or not. And in this case, we were being advised to just be in favor of it, but not against any sort of decision-making process. Does that make sense? And so I'm looking for the findings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the findings would be, hey, if it, you know, this application is being submitted because there's more than 25% being demolished, and as long as it's put back in a way that is,
Consistent with motherland
yes,
architecture.
then the finding would be kind of like there is no impact, I guess. Is that, I think that's basically saying the finding is kind of no impact.
And so we have to find that the proposal is in keeping with the scale and architecture of the neighborhood. That's what the plan.
That the
Architectural
proposed
reviews
architecture
and
is
scale.
generally compatible with Nevada City-style architecture.
Yeah.
So I propose to make a motion to approve the demolition and architectural review application subject to conditions of approval, making the following findings pursuant to section 17.88.040 of the City Municipal Code. That the proposed project will be removing 25% or more of materials. 2, that the proposed rebuild is generally compatible with Nevada City-style architecture. 3, that the proposed project is compatible within the context of the surrounding neighborhood.
Seconded.
Commissioner Ermshar?
On 3, I'm voting no, sorry.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant?
I wish it was someplace else, so, but this will be a no.
Vice Chair Cobden?
Yes.
Chair Nye?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the rigor of the conversation, I really do, and thank you for your consideration and approval. Thank you very
Second
much.
that as well. Thank you all for your time, especially your two for sitting with us and helping us rethink this. And, we said that things happen for a reason, and we're actually much happier with this design, this outcome.
I was going to ask that, is it just, it definitely looks
It's way
more
better.
cohesive. Yeah.
It's way better, yeah.
We were trying before really to use the guidelines that were there and looking at that house that was used in those guidelines. And I think that just kind of got us off track with lots of different other like offshoot ideas, but this, we tried to stay with kind of like the
It's
basic
clean.
concept,
Cleaner.
make it work for us as best we could, but again, appreciate your guys' input and your time.
Thanks for your patience,
Yeah.
especially when I asked really
I
uncomfortable.
thought your questions were excellent.
So I look forward to working with you from our
We need a liaison.
I appoint myself liaison on this project.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I love it.
Thank you again.
And
I appreciate
so,
it.
and you understand what the liaison relationship is about?
I described it to him.
Okay, we've done this before,
And
Richard.
I can help with that throughout.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That it?
That's it.
Wow.
I can't believe it.
Please
Look at
adjourn.
us.
Announcements. Next regular meeting, May 16th.
Oh, we're not done?
Sorry.
No, we're not adjourned yet, can't leave yet.
We're not having 2 meetings next month, just
No,
one?
just one is on the plans for now, yes.
Good. No, keep it that way, please.
Yeah, and then in a public engagement sort of way, we are having a dark sky photography contest.
Hell yeah, that's going
And I really look forward to seeing what submissions come through. We're working with the Nevada County Arts Council to come up with the parameters around judging, and we're also teamed up with judging and other things, and they're going to be hosting the site where folks can submit photography. So we're teamed up with Town of Truckee, Nevada County, Grass Valley, and obviously us. Truckee's doing their own contest, but our contest will be all western side Nevada County. So if you know any dark sky photographers, please spread the word.
There is
And they
a,
can, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, there is a Nevada County Astronomers
Oh,
group
yeah, good idea.
locally.
Yeah.
I would make sure you
Oh, there is?
notify them, yeah?
Yeah, Yeah, I'm going to be reaching
Just
out
joined
to
them
them.
last month.
Mhm.
So
Oh, you just joined?
I just
Awesome.
joined last month, yeah.
Yay.
And you don't need for, because I have some contacts in that area, so.
Oh, great, that's good too, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just for photographers based here? Or is
No,
it from
it's
then taking a
open.
picture from Nevada City?
So the contest is open to people that live outside of the area,
Okay.
but the photo shall be taken in Nevada County.
How do they prove it? That's what I was going to.
Well, I mean, so like, so I've met with.
It's like, that's the best
Oh,
one.
Wendy.
They took it in Arizona, in the middle of nowhere or something.
Well, it
think the
depends.
Red
I mean,
Rocks will
there's
give it away.
usually context. You can see like the mountains and then the sky.
Yeah.
So I'll share my screen here because,
So, along those lines,
Pretty sure
I'm
like
not on
most of
Zoom
these
anymore,
pictures are
but-
going to be the Yuba.
yeah,
along those
our-
lines,
Or
Oh.
like Grouse
one of our
Ridge.
marketing pieces is a photo of the
So beautiful.
Highway 49 bridge. And it's the dark sky pointing towards the north. So you'll love it when you see it. And it's from a local photographer, John Sievert.
Cool.
So I've met with a group of 4 photographers who are going to help us do a night sky photography experience to sort of do education around night sky photography. They're super excited that we are, interested in preserving the night sky because that is what they're passionate about, is taking photos of it. And it's so quickly, going away. So they're in full support. I'm trying to get the community engaged. We'll have a booth at Earth Day here on Sunday.
So was this your idea?
The dark sky photo contest?
Yeah.
Actually, we tagged on to the town of Truckee.
Okay.
Because
That's what I
they don't have a dark sky ordinance per se, but they have
skies.
exterior lighting standards.
Yeah.
And then they're doing it as an awareness campaign to
Cool.
increase their dark skies awareness.
Are they working toward a dark sky ordinance or?
I can't speak to that necessarily. I talked to a planner about it, and they weren't talking about doing a change to their standards. But the way that they review projects is they have standards that are consistent with what our future dark skies ordinance will likely have within it. And then lighting fixtures and things are on the plans so that the building inspector reviews the lighting, make sure it's the one that was approved at the planning level.
Yeah.
So for future and like ongoing construction, that's kind of how they regulate it. So yeah, I will be working on the ordinance, and I hope to bring some ideas to you at the May meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
thank you.
I have a
Thank you.
beautiful, the comment that went through a few years ago, there was a local photographer who was selling prints for very reasonable prices at the art gallery in Grass Valley downtown of that comet over Hirschman's Pond. It's really cool. And also, will you email us links to all the details so I can share them?
Yeah, of
Great.
course.
Thank you.
We're hoping to open the contest next week, so please,
Oh, wow.
once we get the submission all figured out, please spread the word. Amy, I saw an image of your mom's photography up at the real estate office up the street. Does she do night sky photography? It was like a beautiful, yeah, her name was on it. It was Cobden. Julie Cobden, really?
I mean, she's a realtor in that office. So
Maybe
she,
secretly.
yeah. No, she loves to tell you about what she's doing. I would know.
Well, she wasn't the one, but the other realtor was like, oh yeah, that's Julie Cobden's work. And it was like this beautiful moon photo, but
Oh, well, maybe she did take a picture. Was it printed on like regular printer paper? 'Cause
no. It was really nice.
I'll walk up right after this and go look.
Yeah.
Well, with that, shall we adjourn? Unless you have something more to add?
That is all.